Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'm going to give people just a few more minutes to allow them to log on because we're right at the top of the hour. So just hold tight for just a second and we will get started shortly. This is when I wish I had background music for you all so you don't think that you joined a webinar with no sound. Just waiting for some more to log in. Get into GoToWebinar can sometimes be a hassle for some, so we just give them a couple of minutes just to log on, but I appreciate you guys being timely. All right, I see a few more getting in here. So I'm going to start us off 1 minute after. So thank you all again for joining us for today's webinar, Stop Guessing, Start Growing. What's the next step? My name is Monique and I'm the marketing manager here at ECI, and I'm so excited to moderate today's webinar. I'm going to start with a few housekeeping. All attendees will be muted throughout the webinar. However, we welcome your questions and comments. So please, please, please feel free to submit your questions through the questions section of the control panel. We will address as many questions as we can at the end. If I see any juicy ones, I will stop our presenter and ask her the question. And also a copy of this recording will be shared via email, so you don't need to request it. I will be sending that out as soon as I possibly can. Now, let me introduce you. Now, let me introduce you to our speaker today. Lisa O'Flaherty is our Senior Solutions Engineer here in the Manufacturing Division, and she's been with ECI for over 25 years. Her extensive background in manufacturing and software knowledge has allowed her to pair the two into a combination that will drive success for companies that she works with, which is why I'm so excited to have her share her knowledge today. So Lisa, take it away.
All right, thank you, Monique. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to those juicy questions that Monique was talking about. I have definitely entertained those as we go along today. So please, yes, if you have any questions at all, put it into that questions box and we'll get those answered as we go through. Again, my name is Lisa O'Flaherty, and I come to you creating this webinar because this is really a passion of mine. I came from manufacturing, actually came right out of college directly into a large machine builder. And so that was interesting. And as soon as I came into that machine builder, one of my first projects was, we got to get this shop under control. And I thought, oh, wow, okay. So I really learned a lot about manufacturing very quickly. And my task was on the IT side to figure out a system that was going to work, and how we were going to do that, and how we were going to take all of our processes and get them into a system. So today you're going to hear a lot of different things from my background. After I left that manufacturing facility, I came on board with ECI. We actually ran an ECI product, so I've been a customer. And then when I came on board with ECI, I was in implementations for almost 13 years. And that allowed me to go into hundreds of our thousands of shops that run our software and really see the transformations that we're going to talk about today. And that was critical. And it's critical for me because, I've been here now 26 years. And people will say, wow, you've been at the same company for 26 years. How is that? Most people don't stay at companies 26 years, especially in the software industry. And it's because I love what I do, and I love seeing the transformations that we're going to talk about today. So that is really where we're going to go and what we're going to dive into today. So our agenda really is going to be, let's talk about steps to success. Where are you now? Where do you aspire to go? We're going to talk about manual chaos. And some people think, manual isn't chaos. But when you really start to break down what you're doing manually, you'll actually start to find that it's more chaos than you think. We're going to talk about what we call the maturity model, and that's really what this entire webinar is based off of, the maturity model of a manufacturing organization, maturing in your digital advancements. All right, we're going to talk about what in the world does all that mean, and simple steps. How do we get better? How do we go up levels in our maturity model, and how will that impact us as a company? So I'm going to put on the screen here the most important slide of the day, if you will, and we're going to come back to this quite a few times. And I love this slide because, again, I come from an implementation background. And so what that means is I like to watch companies evolve. It's important. And companies don't stop evolving. That's the other nice part. You know, even when you get to 4, you know, there'll be a 5, there'll be a 6, or there'll be an improvement on 4 that you'll still have, because you don't ever want to stop improving your business. There's always different things, different ways that you can do that. Now, today, we're going to talk more simplistic, and we're going to be down in levels 1 and 2. Where are we today? And, you know, really, where do we sit? And so I'm hoping that a lot of you are here. I'm not hoping that you're at level 1, but a lot of you that are here are probably at level 1. And level 1 is, in my 13 years that I did implementation, that's where most of the companies were that I was going into. And so we're going to really dive into this. And as you look at this slide and you're hearing me talk, you're probably putting yourselves into one of these categories. And that's wonderful. And maybe you're partially into a category and you think, okay, well, how can I get to the next one? And that's what we want to really dive into again today. All right. We're going to start at levels 1 and hopefully then leveling up to level 2. And where that typically starts is because you're manual. All right. You might be here today because I have spreadsheets, I am working with QuickBooks, or I have another accounting system that's over here on the side. Everybody does their own thing, and I'm the smartest person in the building. All right, now no matter who you are, that might be that you're the owner, or you're the quoter, or you're the production manager on here today. And it sure seems like if you're not in the business or in the building, things don't get done right, or things don't get done at all. All right, everything starts to depend upon you because it's coming out of your head. We've always done it this way, and you're the one that has all of the knowledge. All right, everybody comes to you, asks you, hey, what am I supposed to do next? Hey, how am I supposed to do this? Hey, we need this quoted. How long is that going to take? So thinking about, everything that's in the heads of the people that have longevity in your business. And again, that might just be you, or it might be you plus the guy that always does all the quoting, or the guy that runs the shop. All right. And what typically starts to happen is, if those folks wouldn't be there, we'd have some problems. All right. Things won't get done, or things won't be quite like they need to be. So let's really think about what's going to happen if that person wasn't there, or what's going to happen if we try to pass this business over. And so that's where the breakdown really starts to happen. And we want to get our business to the point where it doesn't always have to come out of your head. It doesn't have to depend upon just the people that are there with longevity. It can come from anyone, because they all are empowered with the knowledge. And that's where software typically starts to come into play. Now, there are a lot of challenges that face this that we find in businesses. All right, with ECI, when I look at companies and they have certain areas of the business that they really struggle and where software can pick that up, that's where we're going to start to focus in. All right, so let's take a look at some of those challenges. I have 4 key challenges I want to look at today. So the first one is labor and skills. All right, so again, things that are coming out of your head. Someone new coming into the business, they don't know it. All right, your experts are retiring. That's tough. All right, because they take a lot of know-how with them. All right, I know that in our small, I live in Ohio, and in our small school here in Ohio, we are working very hard, and we are working with a lot of the different organizations near us and co-ops and things like that to really get skilled laborers out there into the industry. All right, from the time that they're in high school. But that's, you know, and that's happening around the United States. It is. The problem is it's just not happening fast enough. So we have a severe labor shortage. And even if we do get people in, they don't have the knowledge. So again, that just adds to them constantly coming to you, coming to you, coming to you, because they don't know. So we need good things to be in the system, on paper, digitally showing work instructions, and we'll talk about some of that, that will help these folks get up and running and more into the business faster, all right, without it all having to come from you, all right? We don't want your business to stop just because these certain people are out, or you know, so-and-so is not here, or so-and-so didn't know and we lost a whole lot of money. That's a real reality in businesses that are struggling here. All right, and again, the labor and skills shortage isn't, you know, it's national, it's everywhere. And so the tribal knowledge that we have, and as people retire, we've got to take that and get a handle on it. And digitally is one way that we can do that. We'll look at that here in just a little bit. Now, another problem that we also have is just really margins. All right, I haven't seen a customer yet say, oh yeah, it's okay if you increase my pricing. We understand that prices are going up too, and yeah, you're good with increasing all the prices of all my parts. All right, nobody's saying that. Everybody knows that everything is getting more expensive. Everybody knows that, you know, there's you know, material problems out there. Everybody knows that, but you still have to figure out, where can I sharpen my pencil? Because every customer knows how to say, you need to sharpen your pencil, for sure. So how can you have the visibility to where you can sharpen that pencil? All right, do you know all of your material costs, all of your shipping costs? Do you know what's happening in each individual part and how long it's truly taking to make that? And can you get that quickly? And a lot of times in a manual process, the answer to that is no. Now, could you get it? Yes, certainly. You know, we're writing out time cards, we're adding things up on spreadsheets, we're capturing it all together, we've got it in a nice stack of papers. But really, managing that and getting to those true costs quickly aren't going to help you turn around quotes fast and with a sharpened pencil. Now, the third area is the material side of things. All right, supply chain. And materials, you know, shortages of material, changes in material prices, figuring out whether or not we should purchase a bunch of material and keep it in-house, or if we should just buy to the job. Those are decisions that only data can really help us with. All right, those are decisions that, yeah, you know, gut decisions on materials. A lot of companies, just so that they don't have to worry about either capital or space, just buy to the job. All right, but when we buy to the job and we really look at our usage, are we getting the best price there that we could be? You know, if we were to really analyze our usage, could we buy to stock, use from stock, and have everything be cheaper? Again, these are data-driven decisions that in a manual world, you are just simply saying, you know what, that I don't have time for that. I'm just reacting. I got to get this material ordered. We got this order in. And that's the realistic part of it. It really is. That's what typically truly happens. We get an order in, we say, yep, we got to get that ordered. A lot of times as well, if you are a manufacturer of something large, then you have to look at lead times. And then you also have to look at, all right, if I can't get it in here on time, am I going to have to pay more to expedite to get it in here on time so that I can get it to my customer? And there's just such a disconnect there. We're just simply reacting to, oh, we can't get it here on time. Okay, pay more to get it here. And those are things that we want to be able to stop, because that is cutting into the margins that we just talked about in problem number 2. Now, the third area is that you start to get pressures. All right, and we have a lot of companies that call us and they say, you know, our customer is requiring that we do this, or our customer is requiring that we give them this, or our customer is requiring this certification. All right, we get that a lot. And oftentimes that is kind of that driving force to, oh, we're going to have to do something. We've got to go digital. We've got to do this. And that's because your competitors are doing it. Again, your customers are saying that they need you to report more. And so you are just, you've had it, you know, you've got to do something. So we either keep the customer and we have to get into a software or into something digital, or we lose a customer, or we lose this work because we're not there. All right. And so customers call and they say, hey, where's my parts? And needless to say, that typically in a manual shop ends with a, let me get back to you. All right. The shops that I went into when I was implementing, and in the shops that I work with, you know, we used to call it lovingly sneaker net. All right. We don't have the internet. We have sneaker net. So we'll go put our sneakers on and go out to the shop floor and find out where your stuff's at. Because we don't have it digitally, that's the only way we can figure it out. Now, that in itself was poor customer service, because we had to hang up the phone, go check, and then call them back. And so let's think about it. Let's be in their shoes. Someone, probably their manager or even their customer, is pressuring them, and that's what prompted that phone call. So if you couldn't give them an answer when you were on the phone with them, they couldn't give that other person the answer when they got off the phone. And so in turn, you become that not so in the know supplier. So you want to be the supplier that when someone calls, you can give them an answer right away, where everything is, when it's scheduled, what's happening, everything on that call immediately. All right, think about it. You call support for something. You want an answer, right? You hate it when someone hangs up and has to call you back because you didn't get any resolution to the reason that you called. And that is where digital transformation is going to give you the ability to get in there really with your customers, overtake your competition, and then you know the status. And that's really where we want to get to. Now, all of this sounds really good. I mean, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we? Everyone should just go to a software. All right, but here's the thing. It's the fear. All right, it's always the fear. And I have dealt a lot with the fear. Again, in implementation, the biggest thing is that people are comfortable with the way they do things. They are. And if they weren't, they would probably change it. So oftentimes, the fear of that change makes it feel like you're going to lose money by just changing. And that's not the case. All right, the cost of doing nothing is the highest cost. It really is, because that's where you're losing customers, you're losing visibility, you don't have any of those things we just talked about. So we want to make the ability to change. Let's get to step one, or from step one, excuse me, into step two. Let's get our business and let's move it up this maturity model that we've been talking about. When you look at, different studies, and I'm not a big person on studies, but, I've seen it firsthand. If you're carrying out tasks manually on the shop floor, you have loss of work. It's absolutely the case. All right. If I'm writing down what I did today on a piece of paper, and then someone else is taking that piece of paper and typing it in somewhere else, you just did that task twice. All right. If I told you to go out and make a part, and you needed to make it the first time, and then after you were done doing that, you needed to run it back through the machine to remill off nothing, but you still had to do it twice, you'd laugh at me. But that's because we made the part. We only do it once. But when you do tasks that are also crucial for the business, you do those twice and you don't think about it. But yet it's taking you double the time. So when you re-perspective that and put it into, hey, if we did that with a part, would that make sense? No, it wouldn't make sense. What am I milling off? There's nothing there. We already did that. There's the hole's already there. We're just gonna, so we really need to think about how crazy it sounds that we're doing other things double or triple. I have some companies that they're taking that time and they're putting it in, and then they're going over into, let's say, their accounting package, and they're putting it in again 3 times. So when we really start to think about it, the real cost isn't staying where you're at. Excuse me, it is staying where you're at. The real cost is not moving into software. All right, you need to go there for a lot of different reasons. So let's look back at that maturity model, and let's take a look at really, again, where you are. All right, do you have the disconnected systems? Do you run with cards or simply just prints out on the shop floor? No traveler, nothing that says, hey, do this, this is how to do it, here are work instructions, here are things to watch out for because this will get you. This is what happened last time we broke this tool. This is what to look for on the material. Oh, if this, if you see a burr here, make sure that you go and sand that off. All of these different things, if you're doing them manually here, we want to take it to the second step and make it more digital. All right, so let's take a look. If we have those disconnected systems and we want to get into something more streamlined, we want to get into a software, an ERP. All right, with formal routing. Now, what does formal routing do for us? All right, formal routing is going to give us those instructions. It's going to help those unskilled laborers understand what they're supposed to do. All right, bills of material. I'll know what material I need. I'll be able to see it right on there and get an understanding of it. Maybe I don't know how to read a drawing yet. I don't understand, what that drawing block shows, or how many of what I need. So these are all things that moving up into that second level are going to give us. So that's where we want to focus our time. How can we get from one, manual and reactive processes, up now into one streamlined system and cut out the fear of change. All right, so let's go back through and let's see how that will work. Now, one thing that I learned a long time ago is that when you introduce change to an organization, every organization is different about that. All right, I used to try to approach it in my implementation. Everybody was going to be the same. We were going to do this, 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 and this. But everything needs to be personalized. It really does. All right, and that's something that ECI works very hard with. And so everybody's steps are a little bit different. All right, some companies take steps bigger, and some companies take steps much, much smaller to kind of contain that fear. All right, you don't need a revolution. You just don't. All right, you just need your first next step. How do I get there? I used to also coach soccer. I actually coached my daughter, who's a senior, coached her all of her life here pretty much. And one thing that we used to always say at practice is that our goal was to get 1% better every practice. 1%. 1% seems so simple. All right, and we can say this in manufacturing. All right, we want to get 1% better with our digital transformation every week, every month, whatever it might be. All right, that focuses on progress. And it doesn't have to be immense progress, small wins, just little bitties. And that's all, that's okay. I had some companies when I was doing implementations where they would say, okay, we're going to start in quoting. Wonderful. And then I had others that would say, oh, we're not touching quoting. All right, Jerry, and he quotes and he does it his way. And that's okay. So we bypass that for now. But then Jerry would start to understand that, wow, if I had that information, it would help me. And so getting people on board with change can be a slow process, but we just need to take steps to progress. One of the biggest things is we start by standardizing things. We develop processes, all right? And a lot of it starts with that tribal knowledge, that everything that was in your head or in the head of the veterans in your organization. How can we get what's in your head and what's in their head out on paper as much as possible or into a system as much as possible? We want to take that knowledge and have it available for our new hires. Have it available as work instructions. Have it available so that they understand how to do things just as much as the veterans do. Another big thing with implementation of a new solution is to drive the adoption of it. People would always ask me, why do implementations fail? And I would tell them every single time that it was top-down adoption. In other words, if we weren't forced into doing it that way, we would fall back into our old patterns. Right? I would have companies that would tell me, well, they're just going to go back to doing it that way anyways. Well, don't let them. All right, so we have to sometimes force adoption. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to just say, you know, take the line of oh my, you know, you're going to do it this way or you're fired. No, let's move forward as a business and take the good from all of the different possibilities. You know, I always tell people, you're not going to take a spreadsheet and put it into a software system. You're not. All right, you're going to do things a little bit differently, but there are reasons. All right, your spreadsheet doesn't do this. It doesn't communicate with the other aspects of the business. So as soon as people start to understand that, then moving to the next level makes a lot more sense for them. So we take the tribal knowledge and we start to turn it back into what can we do with that and get it into a system. Okay. So I'm coming back to those 4 things that we talked about in the beginning. First off, all of your knowledge in your head. What can we do with that? All right. Well, first off, we can take that and we can get it into a system. Putting in routing steps. How do I make this? Well, you cut it, you mill it, you lathe, you deburr, you send it out to the outside service, you bring it back in, you inspect it, and you send it to the customer. Oh, okay. And all the instructions that go with that. All right, what's the program that we're going to use on the lathe? How much setup time is it going to take? Are there things that I need to watch out for? Get those things into the system so that when I get a traveler out, it shows me process sheets, setup notes, everything that I need to make that item. All right. If these instructions are on there, now we don't have to depend upon only the people that have tribal knowledge to do things. That information is now in a system. So our laborers, our workers that might not be as skilled coming in, have an advantage and can see the information. Put it all together. The print, all of the setup sheets, everything that needs to happen from a quality perspective, put it all in so that everything about that part is in one place. Now we can start making those. Now you might say, well, I'm a custom shop, so we really don't have like standard things like that. That's fine, absolutely. But you still have processes that get followed. You still have things on how do I make these types of things. Even if you're a custom shop, typically you're making similar types of things. All right. Now, sometimes you can't replace some of the tribal knowledge, but that's just where things like mentoring and whatnot come into play. But we need to use a system as much as possible to get us to tracking, to get us to being able to have basic structure on how to do things in the system. Okay. Margins, being able to see where you're at. I had a company come tell me one time, I asked him, I said, how do you know you're making money? He says, we're open at the end of the year. Okay, all right. But when I drilled down with him and I said, how do you know what parts make you money? He said, well, you know, we got the good with the bad. I said, everybody's got the good with the bad. Do you know which ones are your bad? So you don't take on any more of those than you have to. That is the guessing stuff. All right. You need to be able to, in your business, confidently go in and say, all right, I know the types of parts that I make money on. And I can tell you, because I can go into my system and I can see exactly that this takes 2 hours to do that. This takes an hour to do that. The material took $50 to do that. And I made a margin of 35% on that part. And all of the actual costs that went into it. And looking over time, I can see that on average, we are typically making 35% on that part. Or if I'm a custom shop, when we do welding work and I look at my welding, I can see that when we estimate welding, we are always beating those estimates. Awesome. Or vice versa. When I estimate welding, it sure seems like they can never hit those times out on the shop floor. Well, then we need to rethink how we're estimating welding. But if you don't have anything that tells you that, if you don't have a system that can show you estimates to actuals at a glance, quickly, you're missing out on that. Everybody has to take the good parts with the bad parts. Absolutely. That's just kind of what happens. But you don't want to be the vendor that always gets stuck with all the bad parts just because you want to keep that customer. Sometimes you got to fire a customer. So you've got to get into where you have the visibility and you know where you're leaking money. And again, the word leaking there is very important. I've had shops that they've sold some of the same parts over and over again, and they might have looked maybe the first couple of years at it, but then they didn't look anymore. Material prices went up, labor went up, outside services went up, and all of a sudden, you go in and look at that part and you're losing money. Shoot, you've been running that for 10 years, but now you're losing money. These are things that have to get looked at. All right, and this is where the digital transformation, making sure you're in a system, you can start plugging all those holes, finding those leaks, figuring out how you can make more margin. Now, materials are tough. They are. Day to day, they are tough. All right, tracking all of the things that are happening with your suppliers. All right, some people are fortunate, depending upon what types of materials you're working with, what types of lead times you're working with. But oftentimes, just being able to go in and see utilization and usage of material, how much have we used of that? If I could go in and just look and see, hey, how much 2-inch round have we used? And I can go to my vendor and say, wow, we've used X amount of 2-inch round cold roll this year. If I use that same amount next year, can I get better pricing? Worth an ask, right? All right, let's see what we can do. You're the customer there. Sometimes I feel like customers don't feel like the customer. You're held kind of hostage to your own vendors. There are other vendors, and sometimes you need to make them aware of that. But not having the data, it's harder to do that. But if you have the foundation, the data that says, wow, if I buy from this company, they get it to me faster and it's cheaper. Or this company gets it to me faster, but it's more expensive. But if I'm constantly buying and buying and buying and buying, did the shipping on that rack me more? These are things that you can't analyze manually, not without tens of hours of work per week. So that's just something that a system and data and reports can give you that visibility. And then the last thing is really, again, stopping get it out of your head. Let's stop relying on everything being on my spreadsheet or your spreadsheet or these separate spreadsheets, and we got to figure out how to get them together. Think about all of the manual work that you do or someone does. That's the other thing too that I find is that some companies, they don't even think about all this because they have a whole person that does nothing but bring this stuff together. A data entry person that goes in and adds everything to a spreadsheet off of other spreadsheets, or then recreates it over in the accounting. And so these are the different things that if we stop relying on our memory, start using software tools, we'll have a much better understanding of where things are at and what's going on with them. This is incremental improvement. It is. And it makes a huge impact on your business. If you take all of the things that are being done redundantly in a manual solution, and you take that away, the number of hours that you gain back, what can you do with those? You can make more product. You can get more out the door. You can take on more work. Because eventually in a manual process, you're stuck. You're stuck at a certain level in your business. Only so many orders that we can handle. Only so much revenue that we can handle. And that's what we want to be able to take away those barriers and get you to a growth mindset. Now, when you start to look at all of the things that we've talked about today and what you can do as a company and really, be able to kind of drive that information and drive that success, I want to come back and take, again, another look at that maturity model and basically where you're at. So when we take another look at this, getting back to how can I be more formal? How can I have more organization with all of my orders? We put them into one system, one time, not disconnected. How can I streamline the knowledge and have it all in one solution? When an order goes in and it needs material, you would see that and you would be able to purchase it right directly in the same system. And you know what you're missing in the same system. If something needs quality checked, you'll see it on the router and all of the instructions on what needs to be done. So we're stepping into these processes of becoming a more digital, more mature organization. And that's what our maturity model is. And as you look up through into 3 and 4, that's where we want to get you. Get you into things like automated scheduling. Get you into things like dashboards, giving you everything that you want. Automating input of bills of materials. Real-time collection of shop floor information right from the shop floor through tablets or phones. A lot of companies come to us and they aspire to do all these things, but it becomes the fear of how to step into that halts the progress of it. And that's where with ECI, we don't want you to have that fear.
So Lisa, we did get a juicy question come in. I think that yeah, this is a juicy one, at least, from my perspective. And I think it's a good question because there kind of touches on your fear. And it says, what's the common mistakes made along this journey that I can keep an eye out for?
Okay, yeah. So common mistakes that I find are really trying to do too much and then not really fully adopting what we do. All right. And so I see companies that come in and they say, okay, our whole goal is to get to real-time scheduling right now. Okay. Have you routed things on your shop floor? Have you put estimates of time to those routings? Do you have people that are going to log their time? There are steps to get to there. And that's what this whole step process is. The biggest pitfall is that I want to get to point D from point A and not correctly going through point B and point C to get to point D. Because basic building blocks, it's just like making a park. All right, there's no difference. If I want to put that whole bar in the darn lathe, I want to do it. No, you're going to cut it down to the size of the part first and then put it in. All right, I can't go from A to D incorrectly. And I have a lot of companies that'll come to me and they'll say, well, we bought this system a long time ago, this other system, and I don't think it's set up right. Yep. And that's a lot of it too. We want to drive this so that it's done correctly, so that it's set up right the first time, so that it really provides the benefits that we've been talking about here. And then have everyone buy into it. All right, another pitfall that I found, and actually a very effective way of implementing, is to have champions. All right, guys on the shop floor, do not feel comfortable coming into the office and asking questions. You need a champion on the shop floor. You need somebody on the shop floor that's going to be your voice when you're not out there. That's going to say, yep, there's a reason we're doing this system. It makes sense. You're champions. And there's champions in all areas of your business. You just have to find them. And they're the ones that will help lead and get into the software and make things really work as you're going through change. And that might be different departments. All right, company I came from, we had to have a champion in engineering. All right, engineers are a nice breed. All right, I can say that because I have engineers in my family. All right, but they are a nice breed, but they're different, and they needed someone in engineering that they could go to if they had questions, and it was important. And so don't ever underestimate, having champions as you move through an implementation. That's really critical. All right, so I'm from ECI, all right, of course. And so here at ECI, I always like to say that we think like you think. We do. All right, the product line that I'm affiliated with, we think like our customers think. When you go into that software, you don't have to change your whole world. We think exactly like you think. It's just putting it into a system. But we're going to give you that visibility and that growth and that everything that you don't have using manual systems. And most importantly, the visibility. All right, there's a lot of people, they'll want to hit you, oh, digital transformation, and there's all kinds of words for it, out there. But, you need simplicity to be able to get you to where you want to go. All right, the buzzwords, Internet 4.0. All right, I want visibility 1.0. That's what I need. All right, I don't know about all this other stuff, Internet of Things, AI, yada, yada. All right, now, don't get me wrong, with ECI, we've got a lot of that stuff. We got really cool things, AI tools that bring in bills of materials and read things for you. You'll get there. All right, but it's important to know that you have a software that's going to step you there. Incremental transformation. That's what's most important there. And we have thousands of customers that'll vouch for us. And that's the other nice part about it. All right, I'm here for 26 years because I love our customers and I love what we can do for them. It's absolutely astounding. We have a conference every couple of years and our customers come, and it's one of the most exciting times for me. I love interacting with customers and really seeing what it's doing for them. When we go to trade shows and they come by and they're like, hey, we used you, that's awesome. It's wonderful because I know that we made a huge impact on their day-to-day business. I know that the simple things like just going in and putting an order into their system, that they now have visibility to that order. They're going to know where the materials are to that order. They're going to know how far along it is in the routing process. They're going to know who worked on it, when they worked on it, what heat number of the raw material was used. They'll have all of it. And that's giant for them to stay in business. So that's why I do it. And so we'd love to have you guys join our ECI manufacturing family. So we have a lot of different products we can help you out with. Our manufacturing portfolio with JobBus Squared, M1, DCOM, and we'll put you into the right solution for your business. And that's what's most important to us. All right. Any other juicy questions out there that we have, Monique?
We did get a couple more. I think once you kind of talked about the maturity model, a few of them came through. So I do want to say you can still ask questions by putting your question in that control panel. The other thing I wanted to mention is, as I was listening to you, Lisa, I can hear your love of just like helping companies with whatever they're trying to get to. So I appreciated that. And then the other thing, it made me think of like an iceberg. We're really trying to figure out how you can just stop seeing what's at the top and realize how big of an iceberg you have under the water. So anyways, that was my takeaway. Maybe I've been watching a lot of like cold videos lately. I don't know. Okay, let me jump into the first one. And while you were talking about the maturity model, it came through was, how long does it typically take to implement that first step towards moving to like a level 2?
That's a great question. Yep, no, that's a really good question. So when it comes to moving through the different levels, I have a lot of companies that'll ask me that. How long is it going to take to implement this? Every company is different. We have companies that can move through this in weeks. We have companies that it takes a couple months. Our goal here at ECI is a nice, kind of 3 to 4 month process there to get you up and running into a solution. Now, again, some of our larger solutions, depending, might be a 6-month process, but we really want to keep you within a very manageable time frame. All right, setting goals. All right, this is not something that, again, we're not going from A to D. All right, so we want to have actual attainable goals that you can get to within a solid time frame. All right, and that's important. You can get up and running, this fast as blah blah blah. You really need to establish what those goals are, and that's where we help you in the implementation process to get there. So yeah, definitely, like, again, 3 to 6 months is pretty typical when it comes to that.
Okay, and then the other one that came through, I need to replace my current accounting system to move up a level.
Okay. Yeah. Accounting is always an interesting one. I think I mentioned QuickBooks maybe a couple of times today, and I say that because some of our companies that are manual, they're using QuickBooks, and QuickBooks is a wonderful product. I'll tell you, we've been a partner with QuickBooks for, oh goodness, over 20 years, and it is a wonderful product from an accounting perspective. All right, but QuickBooks was not designed to do scheduling on your shop floor, to maintain your prints and your work instructions and your processes and really build parts. That's never what it was designed for. It's a wonderful accounting solution. So if you have QuickBooks, we integrate to QuickBooks. All right, so if you have QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop, you can keep that. Now, if you don't have that and you have another solution, we have integrated to other solutions in the past. We'd have to take a look at that depending upon what solution you were looking at, or our manufacturing software solutions all do have built-in accounting. So it could just simply be a part of the package and it's all in one solution. That is something that you would want to work through, with your representative, and they'll talk to you about, what's best for your company. I have a lot of companies that stay on QuickBooks because they just, maybe they have an accountant and that accountant wants them to stay there, and that's okay. All right, so we're not going to force you either direction, but we want to be able to give you options.
Beautiful. That was all the questions I saw on our side. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you took away some great information. I did put into the chat the assessment, a link to the assessment. So if you guys are questioning where you are on this level, please click that link and take the assessment. We really appreciate your time and we look forward to seeing you on another webinar. You all have a great day.
Thank you all.